So next up, we have a pre-recorded session. We're going to have a panel. This is about a whole new ball game. How a top gaming app publisher tackled iOS 14.5 and SKAdNetwork. So incredibly topical, understanding how we actually make sure that we keep ourselves active and how we deal with these things. And so we're going to kick off that playback.
Hi everyone, hope you're all doing great and welcome to our panel today, a whole new ball game. In this session, we're going to be speaking with a couple of leading gaming studios to better understand how gaming app marketing and product growth is adapting to Apple's new user privacy guidelines and SKAdNetwork, what they've learned so far, and what advice they would offer to their peers. So we're going to do a quick introduction. So I'm Alex Cooper, and I'm leading the business development in the Nordic region for mobile measurement partner AppsFlyer. And joining me and leading our panel today is my wonderful colleague, Tamar Polak, who heads up enterprise customer success for EMEA and the Nordics. Our three panelists, Piyush, growth lead at Product Madness, one of the world's top grossing leaders in social casino mobile games, such as Heart of Vegas and Cashman Casino. Eran, CTO at CrazyLabs, a top 3 casual and hyper casual mobile gaming studio with over 4.5 billion downloads to date. And finally, Michal, head of marketing analytics at Pixel Federation, global leader in strategy games such as Train Station 1 and 2, and puzzle adventure games such as Diggy's Adventure. Now, one thing I've learned over the past years is video conferencing throws a few challenges your way. So I'm going to be smart and just check that everyone is actually here with me today. Guys, can you just say a quick hello?
Yeah, I can start. Hello, everyone. It's nice to be here and thanks for the invitation, Alex.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me here, and I hope it will be a good panel.
And hi, thanks for having me as well, and looking forward to this session.
Right. And our chair today, Tamar, you are there as well?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you all for joining.
Great. We're going to start with the basics. So iOS 14 has introduced challenges that have never been tackled before. As a result, mobile marketers need to rethink how to measure, attribute, and optimize their campaigns in the age of privacy. And the challenges are essentially largely divided into a few groups. Apple's App Tracking Transparency Prompt, otherwise known as ATT, and the ensuing quest to increase users' opt-in rates. Limited data provided by SKAdNetwork, Apple's aggregated attribution solution, to determine LTV and ROI. And 3, conversion value mapping, which presents material challenges. For example, who should control, who should change the conversion value and when. So let's get straight to the heart of these changes with ATT. The question that marketers are asking themselves tend to focus on one of the 3 variables. Firstly, timing of the prompt, when in the user journey it is shown. Secondly, the purpose string, Apple's small concession to personalization in the ATT framework. And thirdly, what developers can do to drive up opt-in with pre-prompts prior to showing the ATT framework. So we'll go straight into the debate. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Tamar. Take it away.
Great. So the first topic today, as we know, we've been talking about ATT and all the iOS 14 changes in the industry. It's been quite a year for everyone. And there's been a lot of debates about the pre-prompt, right? Either to do it, not to do it, how to do it, and how to tackle basically the pre-prompt and make sure that as many users are opting in. There were a lot of talks about, for example, the layout, when to show a pre-prompt, to who to show a pre-prompt. And I want to start off by asking you guys if you can share a bit about the testing that you guys did regarding the pre-prompt and what you've seen with the pre-prompt and the testing. Actually, maybe Eran, you want to start and share a bit what you guys did and some insights maybe to share with the audience.
Yeah, sure. So we did quite a lot of testing with the pre-prompt. So we started with having a pre-prompt that is really nice and fancy and trying to explain to our user exactly what we're going to do. really in the style of the game and everything. And we tested a lot of that, and we found out that it's actually surprisingly reducing the consent rate. Then later on, we reduced the pre-prompt to really small and with not a lot of text, and we found out that it's increasing. So my recommendation here is to have this, it like really basic prompt with not too much of a text, and this actually increased like 10%, I think, if I remember correctly, the consent rate. And one more thing that is actually lately, and we didn't post it in the blog, is that we have been running some tests, and our recent result is that if you translate this pre-prompt, then you might gain also 5% on top of that. So this is just a preliminary results of our current test, but it seems like translation is a good idea as well for the pre-prompt.
Interesting. Also for, so basically what you're saying is keep it as simple as possible in the right language at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Okay. Michal, you also mentioned in the report that you tested a lot. I think language actually was one of the tests you didn't do, right? Did you already get to that stage or not yet?
Yeah, actually I have to agree with Eran, even though their results aren't finalized yet. We actually started right away with the localization. So we localized into the main languages that we support in the games. And so we haven't actually tested whether it has had a positive impact. However, it was translated from the very beginning. And I guess that's a way to do it. Because like even when the game itself is in a specific language, it only makes sense to show the pre-prompt and the prompt itself and in that corresponding language.
Piyush, do you mind sharing a bit about the pre-prompt and how you did the testing phase and what kind of findings you found based on that?
Yeah, sure. I'll start by saying that this feels like 100 years ago, to be very honest. it's been a while. Yeah. But you know, like looking at the code that I presented over here in the report as well, it's actually true. Like in our case, and this is specific to our category, this is specific to us, basically our product partners. We saw that when we were showing existing users a pre-prompt, the opt-in rate actually showed a slight dip because we were doing A/B testing, and we started right after September. We thought that, you know, let's play around with a lot of pre-prompt. When can we do it? Can we shift it to inside the game? Can we shift it at the start, the timing of the prompt and everything? We had a huge amount of discussion with the product team as well. And this is the final thing that we realized. For new users, we were showing a pre-prompt, but for existing users, we were not showing a pre-prompt at all because we saw a slight dip, you know, when we were showing a pre-prompt. So this was an interesting phase, but you know, at the end of the day, I think Eran and Michal, they literally summed it up really well. Just keep it simple. It's a lot of effort that you put in to actually get around the whole timing of the ATT and, you know, pushing it somewhere else and like showing a lot of pre-prompt. But if you don't keep it simple, because at the end of the day, what we forget is it's up to the user, and users needs to see it in a very, very clear manner. You don't have to just complicate the whole process just to get the opt-in rate, so that it's a bad user experience, right? At the end of the day. So that's one thing that I'll highly recommend. Have a good user experience. Don't complicate it very well.
Great. If we take it a few steps back, right? You have different kind of users, of course, new users and existing users, and there's been, you know, an assumption that existing users will opt in more easily. Probably they know your brand, they're playing. And so on. What are your findings based on that? Is that actually true that you figure something out that went against your assumptions prior? And what kind of testing did you do there? Eran, you want to share some insights?
We did this kind of testing as well. We see a slight decrease in existing users. Surprisingly, we didn't do anything on that, so we didn't take any decision based on that to not show the existing user the ATT because the slide was not that dramatic.
Michal, do you agree with this approach?
Yeah, I guess like it depends. I can't disagree because like it's different for every genre or even different game. In our case, for example, like it's mentioned on the slide, it was surprising that that for existing users, we've seen significantly lower consent rates than for new users, which was kind of interesting. And actually, like even when we were testing pre-prompts, no prompts for those existing users, we haven't seen like a major change in the conversion rate. So actually at the very end, like we show the prompt to all existing users, since we want to collect as many IDFAs as possible at the end, but it didn't really change the strategy between the existing and the new users. So something interesting to share.
Okay, great. Actually, from the gaming side, you're in the most challenging position, right? If you look, for example, at finance, e-commerce, socials, the numbers are a little bit higher. I guess that's also because you have usually more users that are there for a shorter amount of time. Maybe they're not aware of who's behind the game, right? The brand name in that sense, that may create more challenges for you guys. Something else that I read that I thought was very interesting is the GDPR part that obviously we're all familiar with in Europe. And one approach was maybe to merge both. I thought it was a very interesting approach. Actually, from a personal experience, I would say, okay, that makes sense, right? Put it all in one message. Someone will hopefully accept. You will have the IDFA and you will continue playing. But actually, Eran, I think you figured out that it's not necessarily the right way to go.
Yeah, we were surprised about it as well. So, like said before, it's we tried various texts and we didn't see any difference. Now I'm talking about the purpose string in the ATT pop-up. So we tried various texts in this purpose string. We didn't see any effect of that, and we said, okay, so if we can, if there is anything that we can do, like put maybe a legal string there, which is aligned to the GDPR legal string, maybe we can merge the two pop-ups, so our European users will not be required to click through several pop-ups, privacy pop-ups. And the problem is that when it comes to legal, you cannot like squeeze everything in 2 lines. So it was like 6 or 7 lines. And when we did that, we saw that decrease in the consent rate. And so in overall, the business value, I would say, because you cannot localize the purpose string, right? So you need to put it for the worldwide. So the overall consent rate for worldwide was reduced. So it didn't really provide any value. What we can take out of that is that I would suggest to keep the purpose string in the native pop-up as short as possible, no more than 2 lines, because I think the reason that the consent rate was reduced because we had to introduce like 6 or 7 lines of legal wordings there. So we kind of dropped it.
Interesting. Usually when you have, for example, the terms of service, etc., people just click through, right? I mean, I don't think a lot of us actually read the terms of service, but maybe when it's in such a short amount of time and a little layout, the more text you have will create some, maybe we can call it suspicion, right? Maybe that's one of the reasons. Did Pixel or Product Madness test combining the GDPR with the ATT prompt?
Yeah, we did, but we didn't see a reduced consent rate at our end. We've been running the ATT and GDPR at the same time, but we haven't seen any reduced consent rate at our end, at least, which is sort of inconsistent with what CrazyLabs has been seeing. But as I said, I mean, it's basically a subcategory of the gaming as well. It depends on the kind of users that you have and all those things. So yeah, that's what we saw.
Secondly, a really important part is the ATT and the timing, right? So what's very clear is that there's no right and wrong in that sense. I guess that sums up kind of the iOS discussion to begin with. But I would love to hear your thoughts about what's the best time to actually share the prompt, right? Is it earlier in the funnel? Of course, the pluses there are you have a broader audience, more users still active. potentially maybe it's a little bit intrusive. Users don't really know your brand, your game yet. And another possibility is to do it later in the funnel, which obviously is a smaller audience, but potentially a larger amount that will actually opt in. I would love to hear your thoughts, what kind of testing you did, and if you decided to do it earlier in the funnel or later in the funnel with its trade-offs. Michal, maybe you can start.
Actually, did a lot of testing. This specific case, like, so we weren't like that much focused into the messaging and prompt and pre-prompt. But we were testing mostly the timing and the placement. And to summarize those tests, we were basically testing whether we should show it right after the install, after the GDPR prompt. So going very early in the funnel and getting the most and the broadest audience, or we should postpone that to the actual interaction with an ad, because like our games are also ad monetized. Wanted to tie the prompt to the specific game mechanic. And after a couple of tests, like it was maybe four iterations or 5 iterations of testing, we realized that the highest consent rate we were able to achieve in the showing the prompt before an ad view, basically. So it was actually tied to the game mechanic, and the messaging was showing like, okay, we will show you a personalized ad if we have data. And this made the most sense, and we were able to achieve the highest consent rates. But that was our case. It doesn't have to be, it's not a universal approach, of course. It's different for every genre or game.
For sure. So you tested 4 different ways, right? Like one before the ad, one after GDPR, and what are the other 2?
We were testing also with another game mechanic and showing it after ads, because like there was also we will show an ad that's not targeted, and then we will actually ask for the permission, but it didn't work very well. So we ditched that, and we ditched also the right after GDPR prompt. Reason being, we've seen slightly higher consent rates. However, we've seen higher churn rates as well in comparison to showing it before an ad. So we basically stuck with the showing the prompt before an ad. And this is the approach we utilize for every game we have right now live, but we will iterate more in the future.
And how was that for Product Madness?
Yeah, for us, I mean, it's been interesting because, as I said, I mean, we always took the user view, right, in a certain sense. So what we did was, there were a couple of reasons why we started with this approach. First of all is, again, from a user standpoint, if you show everything at the start for our user base, it's always better because they decide whether they want to do the opt-in or opt-out. The assumption was when they're involved in the game, and if we show the ATT prompt, a lot of users would be involved in the game, and there's a good chance that they might just say yes, there's a good chance. But the problem is that, at that point in time, the users are engaged in the game. They don't care about the pop-up at that particular stage if you're going from level 5 to level 10 or whatever that level is. This was the first reason from a user standpoint. It made a lot of sense to show everything at the start. The other 2 were technical and legal reasons, to be honest. Technical reason in the sense that at that point in time, we were worried that prop-listing might not be there in the entire industry. And, AppsFlyer did not have updated attribution at that point in time. I think you guys are working on it right now. So that was the second reason why we decided to go ahead with early stage, approach. And the third was from a legal standpoint, because we had multiple SDKs in the system. We had Firebase, we had Facebook and other stuff. And, the initialization of one SDK was messing around with other SDKs. We had to get the ATT status right away for us to provide the exact amount of data that we needed to send based on the ATT status. And, a lot of other discussions we had with the product team and the tech team, we decided, yes, this approach is the best to go.
So basically within the first minute or so, you actually initialize. Okay.
Yeah, because pushing it, again, as you said, I mean, it's a compromise on your scale as well. But if you do it at the start, you have 120 seconds, the SDK timer, before which you have to collect the ATT status, and we had to show it in the first 120 seconds. In the first 120 seconds, we did experiment. Should we do it a bit later when they reach the lobby? Again, users are more involved in the game at that point in time, as compared to if we show it at the start. But given, as I said, all the three constraints that I talked about, we decided to show it at the start.
That's interesting because the assumption is if you do it later on, then people trust you, and you know the stickiness is already there. But maybe doing it at the beginning and people just want to get it over with, right? And then start playing. Good, Eran, maybe you also want to share a little bit about the timing and if you tested anything there.
Yes, we did some testing. We did it really in early phases when iOS 14.5 was introduced. We didn't see any significant change in consent rate, not enough for us to decide to push it down the life cycle of the game, because we heavily rely on monetization. First ads has the highest eCPM, so and we know the value of personalized ads versus the value of non-personalized ads and the gaps between them. So it was kind of, we had some internal discussions about that, but it was kind of a no-brainer that we need to have it as much as early in the game phase to get the consent so we can introduce personalized ads to our users.
And that brings us actually around another big topic besides ATT, and that's SKAdNetwork and the conversion values. There are, of course, different kind of setups in a very challenging world, moving it from user level to an aggregated world. One thing that we could see is, of course, Apple's thresholds that we're talking about a lot in the industry, and specifically, actually, the postbacks with the null values. So I would like to dig into that a little bit deeper and understand what you found there as soon as the postbacks were coming in. We can see here a quote by you, Eran. I would love to have you start answer that question.
Sure. So I think the biggest challenge here around the 14.5 announcement was the SKAdNetwork. So by far more complicated than the ATT pop-up and the optimization of the ATT pop-up. We've been struggling and trying to get to base our reports and ROAS, internal reports and ROAS predictions based on SKAdNetwork now, leveraging the conversion values as much as possible, getting them back as an attribution data with user conversion value to indicate the user value, and then to build our prediction on top of that. So it's been a long year trying to get all the data. We all know that things didn't work, but at the moment things looks pretty good. But about the conversion values, I think that around like in AppsFlyer post, I think around May, there was a really big improvement there. But up to this point, we were really confused because we built our prediction model on understanding on the conversion value, with understanding that there's gonna be some kind of missing data within that. So we built on that as well. But we were not expecting that amount of nulls and null conversion values from the data. I think that we are now seeing less and less nulls. So it seems like either the industry is adopting more the SKAd, maybe Apple fixing more issues or bugs on their sides, or getting a little bit better with passing this type of information, or maybe the sites are converging with less fragmented. So the source sites IDs are getting converged more, and then the privacy threshold is not that effective, not that dramatic. So that's where we stand at the moment. I must say that at the moment, it looks from our data, it looks like the conversion value is it's good. It's not that dramatic anymore, like it used to be in the past.
Right. I think everyone learned to work with the thresholds, even though, of course, it's a bit of it's a black box in that sense. Product Madness, you also analyze the numbers, right? And for example, the source app IDs and so on. related to the privacy thresholds. Were there
Yeah.
any interesting insights that you can share with the audience based on that?
I mean, first of all, it took me 6 years to understand conversion value. It was really complicated in the whole process, and what kind of benefit that they can get and maximize from conversion value and the whole of SKAdNetwork. Because I like to split this discussion into two: SRNs and non-SRNs, like self-reporting networks like Facebook and Google, and non-SRNs, which is DSPs and other players like AppsFlyer. So for non-SRNs, we have seen a huge improvement after the changes that happened around, I'm assuming, May 24th or May 20th. That around that week, whatever changes Apple did, again, completely unaware of it. They made certain changes, and DSPs and ad networks, we started receiving a lot less conversion value, and we were pretty happy with the numbers that we were getting. And at that point in time, it made a lot of sense. But Facebook and Google sort of got affected with that change, and Facebook and Google were pretty big for us at our end, and we started suffering on that front. So this is where I'm a bit confused, even with the impact of privacy threshold, that how do they change it in such a way that two networks are getting affected? I mean, I understood the reason at a later stage, but at that point in time, we're just questioning, how do I create sort of a conversion value which is working for everybody, which is working for DSPs and ad networks and Facebook and Google and every single partner out there. And that has been the struggle, and I think we're at a much better stage right now, after having understood the situation, and with the AppsFlyer's introduction of custom conversion value, which I have been waiting for a while. I wanted to get that in and sort of use that to expand the definition of revenue itself within the conversion value world, because I mean, we have started using revenue as a big benchmark, and that's all we care about at the end of the day in the first 24 hours. So that's how we have taken the approach. Much better right now. Still not completely convinced by the idea of privacy threshold, but yeah, we have adopted it, I'll say.
I guess the summary is that it's a whole new ball game, right? Obviously, everything goes back to testing phases. It's a complete shift in the industry to begin with, right?
Yeah.
Michal, you also mentioned that you learned basically two main things based on SKAd.
Yeah, I would start with the first thing as mentioned on the slide. So the whole thing actually made an even bigger push on the production and the game teams. It was in the past, since we need to focus on getting as most amount of data within the first couple of days, or even like first 24 hours. And this actually meant that some of our games that were focused or like actually relying more on the later monetization, later conversion to payer, needed to like change dramatically, because like if we don't see any data coming like within the first 24 hours, we don't know whether the EU activity that we are running is profitable or not. So so this is one thing. So we need to optimize the first days of gameplay even more, and the marketing team and the production team needs to work more closely together than any time before. So that was one thing. And then since we were relying also on later stages of monetization, like conversion to pay in later games like day 7, day 14 and whatnot, and making predictions from all that amount of data, we need to change the way we run the predictions on the specific campaigns on iOS. And we are still in the process. We don't have a solution yet. It's just one thing that we needed to rethink straight away.
Thank you so much for your time. In case anyone wants to read the report, feel free to do so, and to talk to us directly if you have any questions. Guys, thank you so much.
Great stuff. I thought it was fascinating. And particularly, I like the fact that they're realizing that these changes around privacy, around IDFA, and also I think upcoming changes to do with the AADC, so that's the age-appropriate design code, are going to be profound. And if that means that the monetization teams, the promotional teams have to work more closely with game developers, that's to me a good thing. I think that's potentially really exciting. So anyway, that was a fantastic session from the AppsFlyer guys and the CrazyLabs and Pixel Federation.